KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng ANC are holding crucial provincial conferences with the hope that the outcomes will unite the party going into the 2019 elections. To help us look at what's happened so far in these conferences, we're joined by political analyst Dr. Dumisani Hlophe from the UNISA School of Governance. Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon.
Yeah.
Firstly, your overall views of the two conferences and the top 5 officials elected at both of those.
Well, I think it's a progressive move on the part of the ANC. I think it presents a bit of a breakaway from the past. I think in KZN and in Gauteng there's been a decent negotiation between the traditional factions, and there's a bit of unity there. And I think it's quite interesting that in Gauteng you can see a bit of a new generation coming in. So the interesting people that are coming in, your Panyaza Lesufi, and a bit of others, so there's a bit of this generational fuse of young people coming in, and I think it bodes quite well for the ANC. Interestingly, in KZN, I think they broke away from the so-called Zuma faction and the Ramaphosa faction. What you see coming up in that province, it's a sense of a unity, and I think there's a sense of wanting to win the election next year, and they're considering that unity is quite important for the ANC in the province. So it does look good for the ANC.
Now, it's interesting that those words always come up together.
Yeah.
Factionalism, unity, and elections. It's an interesting look to next year, where, in the past provinces, where there, especially KZN, where there has been a lot of factionalism, and that's resulted in quite a lot of violence and a lot of deaths, that now leadership elected today is speaking very strongly of unity. And we had Chairperson Sihle Zikalala just before that speaking and saying that unity enables the ANC to advance the revolution. But surely factionalism cannot be overcome in one day, in one move, or can it?
Well, factions are not bad, by the way. Factions are an integral part of all organizations. In every organization, you'll have people that differ from one another, but as long as they continue united on the vision of the organization. Factions are not bad. What is bad is the inability of the leadership to manage the factions. But factions can never be wished away. I mean, even in churches, you've seen in the Shembe, in the ZCC splits up. Factions are an integral part of organization. The challenge is the ability of the leadership to manage the faction, to make sure that they don't destroy that which binds them together. So they'll always be there. And the whole notion of unity is not about these factions to think the same, but it's for them to act in unison for the greater good of the organization.
So what you're saying essentially is that, do you think that the new leadership elected specifically in KZN will be in a better position to manage the factions in that troubled province to better advance the aims of the ANC on a national scale?
Well, for the next year or two, there will be a bit of unity, and sometimes we might confuse the absence of direct conflict as unity, but I think for the next 2 years or so there will be a bit of calm, and the calm, whenever they approach another elective conference, the presence of this faction will begin to manifest themselves more profoundly than at any other time of the year. So if you look carefully about these things, this faction, taking the ANC versus ANC phenomenon in the courts, it happens towards the election within the party. So the challenge that the ANC faces is succession management. Now, they battle, and at any given moment when they have to an election, this is when you see a higher manifestation of the faction. This is why I'm saying that factions by themselves are not the problem. They become a problem when the leadership fails to manage them.
Now, we were talking earlier about younger faces, the youth being more involved in leadership positions in both Gauteng and KZN. How do you see that translating into the policies that we expect to see coming out of Gauteng's conference tomorrow?
Yeah, look, that's the challenge. I mean, I'm not convinced that there's something fundamentally different that the ANC policy resolution in Gauteng will bring to the fore, because by and large they are governed and led, and they depend on the decisions that were taken at the December National Conference, in Nasrec. So there's nothing that is going to be fundamentally different. It's in essence, they are going to say that, from a provincial perspective, this for Gauteng and KZN, that this is how they are going to implement the resolutions of Nasrec in December. It's not so much that these provincial conferences are going to bring something fundamentally unique and progressive, away from those that were decided at Nasrec in December last year.
So essentially, the conferences have wrapped up the major decisions that were going to be taken.
The mother body has spoken. The mother body has spoken. What they are faced with is the ability to implement at the provincial level. But you see, for the Gauteng challenge, by the way, is convincing their own members, the ANC members, that next year they must get out of their houses and go and vote for themselves. That's their biggest challenge. It is not, the next thing is the ability of the provincial government to perform. Any other thing is just secondary and peripheral.
So voter confidence or voter mobility is the ultimate drive of these conferences at the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Hlophe. Dumisani Hlophe, thank you for joining us. We'll get more feedback from you as the conferences conclude and wrap up and things continue to develop.
Sure, thank you.